All right, today we're going to talk about how we turn flax into linen. And flax is a crop that they would have grown out here on the frontier. The whole purpose to produce clothing for themselves, so they didn't have to buy or trade for cloth. During the Revolution, especially when we were boycotting goods from Europe, out here on the frontier especially, it would have been hard to get cloth. So if you could produce that by yourself, that would be all the better. So I'm going to start with, they would start with the flax seed, and here's the whole process at the end of the flax stalk that I have here. This is a grown, dried stalk at the end of the fall is what we get when we get it. You'll see the seed heads on the end, so they would strip them off. And you start with the seed, you have to plant it. So this is what the seed heads look like that we plant in the ground. If I break those apart, you'll see a bunch of small little seeds. And this is what they would plant in the ground. In the corner of the garden up there is where we plant it. And this is our flax that's been dried and retted, which means it's laid out on the ground to partially rot. Because what we're looking for is the inner core, the outer, break open the inner core and get the outer strands of fiber that are on the outside of the stalk. And this is all we're doing is softening up. It's called a break. This is obviously an outside job because it's very messy and something the men would usually do. And when we get to the spinning and the weaving, then they would turn that over to the women. And this is a scutching board. The old people would refer to as getting a scutching, like a kid getting a paddling for doing something wrong. That's where it came from. And again, we're just softening up the fibers. It doesn't look like we're doing a whole lot, but it does help with the next process. And then again, then we go to a comb or a heckle or a hetchel, depending on what part of the country you're in. They have different names for them. And all this is just pointy spikes that help smooth out, remove the toe or boon that's inside. It's called boon inside the, and then we go to the finer one. And what I take out of the comb here is called tow, and that has uses. It's very good for starting fires, and he would use it for animal bedding, or the black powder guys like to use it to clean their guns out with. So they didn't waste it. And of course, the finer tow you can actually spin into a string. Then we got one more finer one yet. If I go through the process, eventually we end up with nice clean fiber like this. And there's still a few small pieces in, but that can be picked out when you're spinning or when you're doing the thread. So once we have our fiber, then we go to a spinning wheel because we have to produce thread in order to put it on our loom. So this is the spinning wheel. Now we turn to get the ladies involved. The ladies are pretty much the spinners. Let's see if we get this going here. The idea is to have a nice, the reason linen is so good, flax is so good for fibers because it's long and you can get a good thin strong thread that is important when you want to weave a finer cloth. You would never be able to spin or weave wool nearly as fine as linen just because of the texture of it. This is cooperating. So once we have our thread, we go ahead and we just wind it off onto a yarn winder that actually measures the length, so we know how much length we have, and then we can put it on our loom. And this is just I won't stand in front of it, but basically the loom just works. You interlock the threads back and forth to weave cloth and keep advancing it till you get your cloth woven. And once we have a piece of cloth of appropriate size, then we can sew it into a shirt or pants or whatever we want to do with it. Here's another type of loom they would have used. This is called a tape loom, and this is just to make things like ribbon and stays and garters and things like that. And this is just a simple weaving process where it's just all done by hand. And that's just a way to make a thin. And then another thing we can do with the toe is we can hand spin the toe. This is called a drop spindle. And what I like, they don't have a store to go buy string, so something as basic as string or cord we can make. I use this to use in the garden to tie plants up and to mark rows and things. So this is how we do the. This is just simple drop spindle that anybody, even kids, would learn to do this. And that's pretty much what we have. They would, depending on the coarseness of your thread and your weave, you can have something that's coarse. This is just a bag that I've wove just to carry things in, and you have just your finer cloth to actually use for clothing. So that's how the flax turns into linen.